These are the 5 mistakes that I see grappling athletes make all the time when it comes to improving their conditioning. Let's discuss. What's going on, guys? My name is Josh Selledge. I am the BJJ strength coach, and today we're going to be discussing the 5 conditioning mistakes that I see happen all the time, and that's holding a lot of grappling athletes back from winning more matches and getting injured less. Before we dive into it, I want to invite you guys to sign up for my free shoulder pain relief series. It's just a couple videos that I'm going to send you via email. There's no strings attached or anything like that. It's not weird or anything, but I'm a grappling athlete. I've been a strength coach specifically for grappling athletes for a minute, and I know what it's like to be in pain. I know what it's like to have to withdraw from competition because your shoulders are all banged up, and I don't want you guys to have to go through that. It sucked for me to go through it, and if I can do anything to help you guys out, I want to be able to do so. So if that's something you're interested in, just click the link below. You just got to drop your email. It'll get sent to you. What you're going to get is you're going to get a couple videos discussing some shoulder range of motion assessments that you can go through to kind of see what you need to work on to improve your shoulder health. And then it's going to give you some specific mobilizations and stretches that you can do to decrease the shoulder pain you're feeling. And then lastly, it's going to provide you with some strengthening exercises that are going to allow you to protect your shoulders in the future and decrease your overall risk of injury. Because ultimately, I want to help you guys win more matches and get injured less. So if that's something you're interested in, just click the link below. Drop your email, it'll get sent to you, and we'll be all good to go. Let's go and discuss the 5 mistakes that I see grappling athletes make all the time when it comes to conditioning. Let me first clarify and say that no one ever lost a jiu-jitsu or wrestling match because they were too conditioned. No one ever got injured because they were too conditioned. Conditioning is very important when it comes to any grappling sport. You just do one jiu-jitsu class or do one wrestling practice, and you will immediately recognize how important conditioning is to be a grappling athlete. Unfortunately, a lot of people get conditioning training all sorts of twisted, and I see people make these mistakes all the time. Maybe their heart's in the right place. Maybe as a wrestling coach, the wrestling coach has like the right idea, maybe, but the way he's implementing it is just way off. Or you're a jiu-jitsu athlete and you're doing your own training on the side, and you're just really screwing up your jiu-jitsu gains. You're screwing up your strength gains in the gym, and you're screwing up your conditioning gains, and you're really not making that much progress in enhancing your grappling performance because you're making one of these 5 mistakes. Mistake number 1, going on long runs. Dog, I freaking hate running. That's just me personally. I freaking hate running, so I will do anything possible to not run. But the athletes that I do work with that come to me saying like, hey, Coach Jay, I need help building up my conditioning. I kind of lift a little bit, but I really feel like I don't have that much of a gas tank when I'm doing live training, but I'm running all the time. Whoa, and then I stop them right there. Whoa, what'd you say? I'm running all the time, and when I do these wrestling matches, I just get tired all the time. Okay, well, let's talk about your running. What are you doing for running? Well, you know, usually I run for 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week after practice. And that is the downfall right there. That's number 1, mistake number 1. A wrestling match is only 6 to 7 minutes, guys. So what are we doing running for 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week? That's just way overkill. Now, there is a time and place to develop and build up a strong base of aerobic conditioning, but in season, doing those long runs, there's really not a lot of benefit that comes from doing those long runs for a multitude of reasons. If you're a wrestling athlete or a jiu-jitsu athlete, you know for a fact that there is no exercise, no workout, nothing that's going to perfectly replicate the type of feeling you get when you're tired in a wrestling or jiu-jitsu match. There's just nothing like it. It's so unique. It's so different than anything else we can do in the gym. It's so hard to replicate. And when you go on these long runs, here are some of the issues that I have with grappling athletes going on long runs. If you're going on long runs, oftentimes you're going in a straight line. That really doesn't have a lot of transfer and carryover. The movement of running in a straight line does not have a lot of transfer and carryover specifically to grappling sports. So I'm not saying that doing things in a straight line is bad. Don't get it twisted. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, running in a straight line with no variety for 30 to 45 minutes, especially when a jiu-jitsu match is usually anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes and a wrestling match is only 6 to 7 minutes, in season, it's a little bit overkill. When people go on long runs, unfortunately, a lot of times their running technique isn't very good. Their breathing techniques, which I'm actually going to talk about breathing technique in a minute, their breathing technique is all whacked out, and it just causes a lot of extra stress on the joints that is hard to recover from. If you want to do something that's a little bit longer pace, something where you can just shut your brain off and just kind of go for a minute, I would highly suggest you do something that's going to attack two birds with one stone, something like a sled drag. Drag a sled for 10 to 15 minutes. You don't need to do 30 to 45 minutes. If you're cutting weight and you're just working up a sweat, that's very different. We're not talking about that. I'm just talking about conditioning. When you're doing conditioning, you don't need to do and especially in season, you don't need to do these really long bouts of conditioning. You get a lot of that work already in your wrestling practice. How long is a wrestling practice? Hour and a half, 2 hours? So you're already getting a lot of aerobic conditioning just from wrestling. And then depending on how much time you're spending at jiu-jitsu, you get the same effect. Every day I go to jiu-jitsu, I'm already getting 45 minutes of grappling specific conditioning work through grappling. I think grappling is the best way to build up conditioning for grappling. Mistake number 2 that I see a lot of grappling athletes make when it comes to conditioning is only doing sport-specific live training in the competition time frame. So what does that mean? A wrestling match is 6 minutes in high school, 7 minutes in college. The mistake there is you only do 6-minute matches. For jiu-jitsu athletes, depending on what belt level you are, most matches are anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. If you're doing ADCC, sometimes they can be 20 or 40 minutes. Most tournaments in jiu-jitsu, matches are anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Wrestling matches are usually 6 to 7 minutes long. And the mistake is only doing 6 to 7 minute wrestling matches or 5 to 10 minute jiu-jitsu matches. And the reason why it's a mistake is because you start to fall into the same pace every one of those matches. If you kind of have a game plan set up and you kind of know what you like to work, you kind of fall right into that lane and you stay in that lane and you kind of maintain that same pace over the course of those 5 to 10 minutes for jiu-jitsu and over the course of those 6 to 7 minutes for wrestling. What you can do to improve your conditioning is do shorter intervals that are going to allow you to push the pace a little bit harder, work at a higher work rate, be a little bit more explosive, scramble a little bit faster, hit your techniques a little bit more explosively and put a little bit more oomph on there, so that way you can build up the conditioning to use that in the middle of a match. So how I would break this down is I would have some athletes, when I was coaching wrestling, we would have some training sessions and practices where we would do 3 to 5 6-minute straight wrestling matches. But then on some other days, we would do some very specific positional sparring that are 15-second goes, 30-second goes, or 60-second goes. And what this does is this allows us to get reps in a very specific position over and over and over and over at a very high intensity. So if you're a wrestling athlete, that may look like 10 rounds per person, 15-second goes. You guys, one person starts in on a high C, and the other person starts standing straight up, but starting with a cross face. You do 15-second goes from that position, 10 rounds each person. That's a pretty solid workout right there. If you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, you can do the same thing, where this is actually something I've done recently, where you set a timer for 2 minutes, you do 5 rounds per person, but one person's gonna start on top, one person's gonna start on bottom. The person on top is looking to pass, take the back, or submit. The person on bottom is looking to sweep, take the back, or submit. If any of those things happen, you just reset. And it's fast. It's a hard pace that you're pushing for that 2 minutes. You rest anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes between each set, and then you go again, and then you go again, and then you go again. If you do this, you're actually able to get in more work per minute, per round, as opposed to if you only did 10-minute jiu-jitsu matches, or opposed to if you only did 6 to 7 minute wrestling matches. The third mistake that I see grappling athletes make all the time, and wrestlers, I'm talking to you guys, I know this is you guys, is high intensity everything. High intensity is great. Building mental toughness, and just like going hard in the paint is awesome, but you need to be careful and you need to do it in a careful way, because there's a time and place to do high intensity conditioning sessions, and there's a time and place to do some lower intensity training sessions. If you go high intensity all the time for every conditioning session that you do, you are going to experience a lot of burnout, and it's going to be very hard for you to recover over time. The more you start stacking those up, the less you're going to be able to recover if you're not being careful with how you structure your training. There's also a time and place to dial things back a little bit, working at about 7 out of 10 intensity, sustaining that pace for anywhere from 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes, doing a variety of exercises. In a previous video, I talked about my GPP giant sets. This is a great way to build up some conditioning at a low intensity that you can sustain for a decently long period of time, longer than a traditional wrestling match or jiu-jitsu match. And you're still able to attack weaknesses, build up some more muscle mass, decrease your risk of injury by attacking those weak points and just promoting a lot of blood flow through the joints, as well as increasing your overall base aerobic conditioning. Mistake number 4. This is gonna ruffle some feathers a bit, but mistake number 4, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see wrestlers and grappling athletes do all the time, and that's cardio circuits or HIIT training. Now, there is a time and place for HIIT training. I actually really enjoy HIIT training when it's done the right way. HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. And cardio, you see these cardio circuits that people do, and sometimes the intent is there, but the execution is way off. You think about high intensity interval training. What are you thinking in your head? You're thinking about, like, at a CrossFit gym, they have 5 stations. You go for 1 minute at each station. You're going as hard as you can, doing as many reps as you can, and then you get a 1 minute rest. That's a typical, quote unquote CrossFit fight gone bad type of workout. And we see a lot of these workouts that are labeled as high intensity interval training, or like these cardio circuits where you're rotating from station to station. The problem is that if it's supposed to be high intensity, you need to have an adequate amount of rest so that you can maintain high intensity on every set. If you can sprint and work really freaking hard on the first 2 sets of that workout, but then on the next 3 sets, you're slowing down, going, you're not able to move fast and explosively, well, then you're not training at a high intensity anymore, and you're actually going to get a different training adaptation and stimulus than if you did hill sprints with adequate rest between every set. So I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to do high intensity interval training. I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to do cardio circuits, but if you want to train at a high intensity, you need to keep in mind that you need to have adequate rest between sets so that you can actually work at a high intensity. But don't go into these HIIT workouts thinking that everything, you're gonna get faster, you're gonna get more explosive, you're gonna get more powerful because you're doing this high intensity interval training, when really it's only high intensity for the first couple of sets, and then it just turns into kind of a more aerobic based conditioning workout. The 5th and final mistake that I see grappling athletes make when it comes to conditioning is they're not breathing the right way. I've talked about nasal breathing before on my Instagram. I've talked about nasal breathing, I'm pretty sure, here on YouTube. Phil DeRue has some great training knowledge and training videos about nasal breathing, and he got a lot of that information from Patrick McEwen, who wrote a book called The Oxygen Advantage. When it comes to breathing, we need to be able to train ourselves to breathe primarily through our nose while we're rolling, while we're drilling, while we're lifting, while we're doing conditioning workouts. Even in everyday life, we want to be breathing as much as we can through our nose. And the reason why is because when we breathe in through our nose, it's going to be a more parasympathetic breath. It's going to be a more efficient breath. We're going to be able to intake more oxygen more effectively, and we're going to be able to not use as much energy to bring in that oxygen and then deliver that oxygen throughout the rest of our body. Shut your damn mouth. Try to breathe through your nose as best you can, and maybe I'll make some more videos on nasal breathing and how to effectively incorporate that into a training session and into a training program down the line. But those are the 5 mistakes I see grappling athletes make most commonly when it comes to improving their conditioning. If you guys are interested, I have a free shoulder pain relief series that I want to send you guys. Just click the link below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Josh Selledge. You guys can follow me on Instagram at Joshua Selledge, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.